So I moved closer to take the first initiative by taking her hand and laying my head onto her body with the blanket in between. I smiled once more and spoke quietly. Then it's only you and I. But with that nothing I would further need, she whispered quietly as she placed her hand on my neck. I'm so glad that you decided the way you did, she added. Partly you have to thank your dad, because he came to me and kind of opened my eyes. He showed me that everything between us is so far away from being a temporary illusion, an illusion to just forget and plunge into something else. In fact, I believe that our connection is the only thing that is truly real. Real in the sense of lasting, eternal. Yes, I know what today brought forth, but I have the feeling that this is not going to separate us. Intangible and spongy, I know, but you might have heard the following. When the mind has no words to lie about the truth, the heart comes and feels the truth about the lies. I know exactly what you're about to say, Aaron. In my own words. What flows between the two of us is being referred to as real love, characterized by the fact that we can't understand it. But at the same time it is downright healing and just eradicates everything that is out of alignment with it. I agree, Chloe. I would describe an illusion as follows. One day I will have the abitur, then I will have a job. I will own a nice car someday that bestows me with slight luxury, and when I'm old, I will sit in my chair and say the following. I gained the abitur to get a job. I got a job to buy myself happy and to say on one of the last days that I dedicated my life to illusions because they all were here and passed away. The abitur is not of need anymore. The job lies in the past. The car broke down someday. But you will stay, because you're the only thing that is beyond an illusion. Everything linked with conditions, if this, then that, is an illusion. The unconditional, on the contrary, lasts for eternity, and that in return characterizes truth. In my opinion, the only way to make true love tangible, to say you're loving truly, just love because you love. From my side, I love you, Chloe, and nothing and no one will change that. I love you because I love you, and the following 11 weeks will prove that, whether one shows approval for that or not. As a consequence, I stretched out the palm of my hand and waited for her to reciprocate, which she did a couple of moments later. We stayed mostly calm, as words couldn't even describe our feelings close to the truth. But overall, for saying every minute that I loved her, our time together was way too valuable. Whereupon I consulted myself to find something more extraordinary, something that would remain for an eternity. A legacy carrying that insignia of ours. But what exactly that was, or how it should look like, was still uncertain. Although I had tons of concepts right away when I thought about it, nothing could do justice to my expectation, as I dismissed 99% of my ideas right away. Only one was standing. More precisely, it was based upon one of the first days we spent with each other, when we let our imagination do its thing and imagined being at the most beautiful locations in the world. In this regard, I vaguely remembered a snowy mountain and a beach. Indeed, when I only imagined us being there, goosebumps overcame me, but simultaneously questions as to how that was supposed to be realized. I couldn't count the arguments against it with solely one hand. My parents and their presumed lack of comprehension resulting from the fact that they didn't know anything, unlike Chloe's parents. Although they were fully informed about us, I evaluated my idea to take their daughter away to be just over the top. Not even speaking about the regulations of the hospital related to her not weekly but daily treatment. Further, it would be a whole lot of organization, and with organization comes the question related to money. I'm in school and my parents were quite distant from being millionaires. After all, we are talking not about traveling to the next city. According to my plan, it implied going to another country, even another continent, which is everything but cheap. And lastly, when something happened while we were away, then what? I had the full responsibility to care for her, as no one else was around, and related to that, I severely doubted my capability to do that comprehensively. On the other side, Away from the negatives, it was an opportunity for both of us to enjoy each other's companionship, what was for me the utmost, measured by those feelings and reactions inside my body when we were in contact. And in this aspect, there was no doubt that she likely felt the same. But in that case, she had to find solutions to those flaws as well. In short, we needed a miracle, or better, a chain of miracles, to realize the plan she was not yet acquainted with. But apart from that, and that was my concluding result, the main matter was that we spent the time together, whether that happened here inside the hospital or on the moon. Although I was not fully satisfied with only giving myself to her, I had to admit that it was the only thing being spontaneously possible. It avoided most of the previous contrasts. The one likely had to be resolved anyway, namely the one in terms of my parents, as they probably wondered as to why I was visiting my friends so unnaturally frequent. Either they were on my side or not, but in both cases I was determined to do it, whatever it takes. To stay together as close as we never had done before, just like it was manifested in the very moment we were situated in, sitting next to each other, just enjoying every millisecond. But about half an hour later, filled with utter intimacy, we were disrupted by the door opening. But unlike earlier, we didn't pay much attention and just kept existing in our own world. We were faced away from the entrance, so we didn't see nor care who it was. Even after we felt the footsteps shaking the ground next to us, we persisted in our indifference. First, when the entity stood in front of us, we slowly came back to the room 511 of the neurology. Then we saw namely 2 of them in number, 2 quite familiar ones. Dr. Bush sat himself next to me, and Jessica proceeded to Chloe's side. But the in the meantime sat in silence didn't change at all, as from then on 4 people shared the bed while not leaving any space for speaking. From time to time we heard a long stretched exhale from one of them, but nothing exceptional. Only as the doctor spontaneously coughed, Jessica saw the opportunity to perforate the air. So that is the proof for anyone that there is nothing to disrupt the 2 of you. The doctor was a little bit skeptic when I told him, but now he likely has to admit that he underestimated you, just as I did. Correct, doctor? He kind of nodded, but kept on looking to the floor, then spoke softly. Indeed. Something is only seen as miracle when it has already evolved, when it has hatched, when there is no opportunity for it to be not a miracle. What I mean is, you can't predict a miracle. That characterizes it, namely, according to the definition of serendipity. Suddenly Chloe interrupted his prudent speech. It's good to have you back, doctor. Excuse me. My point is that I have not seen a miracle for a long time. Basically until today. 2 people being forged together like that is unfortunately not the norm in today's world. But anyway, I'm glad to see that you have one another, as it is going to be crucial for the remaining weeks. And in this regard, I have an announcement to make. Normally that's the time I would request the visitor to leave, but this time I'll make an exception, because I think it will benefit both of you. Until now, and that is for Erin, she was provided with a medication, trying to kind of diffuse it, so that we were able to conduct an operation. Later in the case it receded. But as earlier, an operation is complicated, as vital areas of the brain are among the affected ones. And an operation now would not improve that. We have had dozens of specialists here for including their second opinion, but... Chloe, referring to the status of things, we consider to discharge you very soon, as the treatment will most likely not make a difference anymore. It has not to be interpreted as giving up, but rather as giving in and giving you the chance to use the time you have left in certainty instead of dealing with eventuality. That means also that our relationship is going to end now, while yours will begin. Choose wisely, Chloe, as you have the chance to do anything. Enjoy life the way everyone else should do, not like you are going to have moments to enjoy at some point in the future, but rather have them now, since the future is nothing else than a consequence of the present moment. Some waste their future only because they have one. That is the problem. Further, when you want to feel a certain way at a certain point, then sow the seeds right now. That way you serve as paragon for many, also for Aaron, as for whom it already worked. I assume he has not been like that before he came here, namely to say that conversion was caused entirely by his cerebral trauma is an exaggeration. The decision to stay, in this case, is only made by those who are tied to the moment and don't care too much about what may come. And let me assure you, you may diverge from many and simultaneously tower above those who would abandon the person they claim to love and let them suffer to death while they try to flee to someone or something else. In fact, it proves that you have a certain degree of maturity. I do not know whether you showed that before, but as long as you do now, everything else is irrelevant. To cut a long story short, I wish you everything good for the remaining time, truly expressed from the bottom of my heart, because you take the misused term of love to another level, perforating superficiality, what many are not capable of, unfortunately. Anyway, Chloe, just be prepared to be unleashed from your prison. With his final words spoken, he turned away. To me, it seemed almost as if he went sentimental. Something I never could have dreamed of, for he appeared so stoic, so solid all the time, what he obviously had to maintain, as he had rational decisions to make. But as the saying goes, even the hardest rock will break away one day. He revealed the more sensible side of himself as he slowly approached in contemplation of goodbye. Actually, he said, Chloe's release would happen a couple of days or even weeks later, though he acted as if it was just hours later. But maybe he did approach now, because he was, so to say, surrounded by the initiated. Empirically spoken, I knew that when you're being released, the leading doctor and one inferior come to you and inform you about anything further relevant. Like that, it happened in my case, and so it would in Chloe's too. But when you have such a formal procedure, you can't just burst into tears, as you could, for example, in a more loosened atmosphere, where only friends were present. So with that in mind, I saw that Dr. Bush got closer to Chloe and stretched out his hand. At the latest, when Chloe reciprocated and they stood there whispering something to each other, neither I nor Jessica could maintain composure. The contagious aspect of the goodbye once and for all contained something unfathomable that entrained everyone else. I looked at Jessica while she slowly sunk to the ground with her head. It reminded me that it wouldn't be easy at all, though it was more than worth risking everything. As for her, as for me.